For centuries, we have heard different information about witches. Well, it turns out that it was largely fabricated. All sorts of accusations have been made against people, and confessions have been extracted from them just to create a sort of storyline around the subject of witches and witchcraft. In the last 1,000 years, over 50,000 women have been lost in Europe alone for being called witches. Thousands more have been accused and imprisoned. At the time the witch hunts began, calling someone a witch was as easy as naming someone who threatened you, challenged your beliefs, or you believed was the cause of the misfortunes in your life. It was that simple. Witch hunting is getting the right PR, and people grab the opportunity to make it their profession. Actually, the history of witches and witchcraft is much more interesting than you can imagine. In March 1644, a man called Matthew Hopkins claimed to have seen 6 witches in the Manning tree who tried to end his life. Due to the revelation he made, Hopkins became a professional witch hunter, bringing over 300 women to trial and subsequent execution between 1644 and 1647. Hopkins began to journey from one place to another to find witches, and some of the places he traveled to were Essex, Suffolk, Norfolk, Huntingdon, and the famous Eastern Anglia. All he was doing then was fishing out supposedly witches, forcing them to confess, and then executing them by hanging. The exciting thing is that the local authorities of wherever he visited paid him for doing this. But let's leave that aside for a moment. We spent countless hours in the library studying ancient documents and texts to find out who the first witch in history was. And we found her. The first documented punishment by death of a person accused of witchcraft was that of Alice Kittler in Ireland in 1324. She was a wealthy woman accused of witchcraft and plotting to kill her husbands. Her case is one of the first documented witch trials in Europe, all of which makes us wonder how witches were identified, especially in the Middle Ages. Is there a specific description of what or who is a witch? How did they recognize the witches in the past? There are several definitions of the term witch, depending on who you spoke to or what you read. Some believe there are white witches, some may describe them as dark art, and some people would say they are Wiccan, pagan, or Satanists. But the fact is that there is no official or specific definition for what a witch is. Even in the Middle Ages, when the concept of witch hunting was rampant, the definition varied too. And while there was no exact definition right then, over 100,000 people were accused of adultery, and over 80% of them were women. The hours spent in the library paid off, however, because the search for the first witch, Alice Kittler, led us to another discovery that sheds a lot of light on the subject. Rather ominously, whether she was the one who asked us to find Malleus Maleficarum. Popular definitions of the time were influenced by some writings, one of which was a book entitled Malleus Maleficarum, which was published in 1487. The title of this book means The Hammer of Witches, and reveals how to identify a witch or accuse someone of witchcraft. After its publication, another 2,000 women lost their lives because they were deemed witches. When this book was published, the church had already banned any thoughts of the existence of witches, and the punishment for accusing someone of witchcraft was greatly reduced. However, the book became popular and stirred up the public's dormant passion for the subject, and many people began to define themselves as professional witch hunters. It contains various methods of identifying a witch, and one of them is prolonged torture. There were then nearly 17 types. Whenever a witch is described as having confessed without torture, what it really means is that there was simply no bloodshed during the torture. There are other tests besides torture. For example, a person can be called a witch if she does not feel the prick on her skin or if it does not cause bleeding. Someone would be called a witch if she could not recite the Our Father prayer. Other may be declared a witch simply because they seem more intelligent or give off body odor. Another test is the water test. Anyone who stays on the surface of the water is a witch. Some women are held underwater for several minutes, and if they survive, they are witches. To date sounds extremely foolish, doesn't it? But how far can the history of witches and witchcraft be traced back in time? Regino of Prum's Canon Episcopi, an earlier document about witches and witchcraft, the Regino of Prum's Canon Episcopi, was written in 906 CE, around the time when the Catholic Church had already banned witchcraft. This book appealed to historians because it featured pre-Christian references and was related to the region of France. A part of the book reads thus: Bishops and their officials. If they find a man or woman follower of this wicked sect, referring to sorcery and evil magic, then they must eject them foully disgraced from the parishes. This passage explained that witches were treated as outcasts in the society, a set of people not allowed to be part of the parish in Christian Europe. The book also revealed how women, not men, become witches. It read thus:
It is also not to be omitted that some wicked women who have given themselves back to Satan and been seduced by illusions and phantasms of demons believe and openly profess that in the hours of night they ride upon certain beasts with Diana, the goddess of pagan and an innumerable multitude of women, and in the silence of the dead of the night to fly over vast spaces of earth and obey her commands as of their lady, and are summoned to her service on certain nights.
It was revealed that such phantasms are sent by the devil, who deludes them in dreams. The reference to Diana was quite interesting, as she was referred to as the goddess of the crossroads and moons, both of which were symbols of the other world in the Roman and Greek cultures. Some cultures even referred to her as a deity of the underworld, usually the Hecate, a god that controlled magic and spells. The book continues by saying,
Satan himself, who transforms himself into an angel of light when he has captured the mind of a miserable little woman and has subjugated her to himself by infidelity and incredulity, immediately transforms himself into the species and similitudes of different personages and deluding the mind which he holds captive and exhibiting things and leads it through devious ways. And while the spirit alone endures this, the faithless mind thinks these things happen not in the spirit, but in the body.
The history of witches can be traced all the way back to the Bible. For example, 1 Samuel 28:7 describes how King Saul asked the witch of Endor to summon the dead prophet Samuel's spirit to help him win the war against the Philistines. The witch summoned the spirit, and instead of Samuel going to war, he prophesied the death of Saul and his sons. Saul's sons died in battle the next day, and Saul committed suicide. Other Bible passages refer to witchcraft, such as Exodus 22:18, which says, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." This passage validates the existence of witches and witchcraft and states that it should not be allowed, but it never reveals how to recognize or deal with a witch. We also have references to witches in other old texts, such as Homer's Odyssey, where Circe, a Greek goddess, turned men into pigs. Outside of Christianity, there exist several mythologies on this subject. These include the witch distorts what is said, the witch and the fisher boy, a girl and her rival who is a witch, the bewitched husband, and finally, a man marries a woman unaware that she is a witch. The 5 myths show a pattern. First, stories about witches are described around individuals and family members, and most of these stories blame witches for human mistakes. Secondly, witch mythology is restricted to Europe and Asia. In 1692, one of the bloodiest witch hunts took place in Salem, Massachusetts. The trials there began when 9-year-old Elizabeth Parris and 11-year-old Abigail Williams began experiencing fits, convulsions, and uncontrollable screams. During this time, medicine and technology were still in their infancy, but modern research suggests that a toxic fungus must have been responsible for these symptoms. Soon, more young women started showing the same symptoms, and there was fear everywhere. What followed was the Salem witch trials. 3 women, Sarah Good, Sarah Osborne, and Tituba, were accused of witchcraft. The trials reached a grim apex on June 10th, when Bridget Bishop became the first accused witch executed in Salem. During the mid-90s, a modern form of witchcraft called Wicca was founded in England by a man named Gerald Gardner. Gardner was a traveler, and during one of his trips, he met the famous occultist Aleister Crowley in 1947. Most of the practices in Wicca were drawn from Crowley's own, which dates back to 1912. Today, Wiccans are still following in their founder's footsteps. The word Wicca was derived from Scots English and meant wise people. These witches believe in nature, and their worship incorporates elements of ancient pagan beliefs, ritual practices, and ceremonial magic, drawing inspiration from various sources, including Celtic, Norse, and other European traditions. Many followers of Wicca observe traditions throughout the year, with one of the most prominent being Samhain, the ancient Celtic festival that influenced our modern Halloween. But if the life of the priest shocked you, it is only because you do not know that you would not survive a month in ancient Greece. Just click the thumbnail on the screen now, and we'll see there in a second.